Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Australia once again, and we're going to go to another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. Now, these guys are a relatively new addition to the Australian beer scene, but they are also a very, very well respected name. They've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years, and it is most definitely fair to say that these guys are best known for their sour beers, wild ales, wood barrel fermented sour beers, however you want to term them. They are apparently doing some of the best beers in Australia in this particular style category, and their beers are starting to travel a little bit further afield across the world, which is great to see. When I was last in Australia, that was 2015, there were some really solid breweries at that time, but Australian beer just didn't travel very far. But in the last 10 years, there have been many new breweries that have opened up, and their beer is starting to spread all across the world, so that really is great to see. But as I say, these guys are very well renowned for those wild beers, sour ales, whatever you want to call them, and Australia is a great place for that because you've got all the different wineries which will give you a wide array of barrels, and you've got all these different kind of flora and fauna and things like that that will give you a lot of really interesting yeasts. But the beer we're going to have a look at from these guys today is one that has an adjunct in it that I really enjoy when it comes to this particular style category, and it has got very good ratings as well, so I think this is a very nice place to start as an introduction to this particular brewery. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Australia. Like I said, we're going to go to the state of New South Wales, the city of Sydney, and the district of Marrickville, which apparently is in what they call the inner west of Sydney, although it's very close to the airport and very close to the east side of the city from what I saw on the map. But that means that we're going to have a look at my first beer on the channel from Wildflower Brewing and Blending. So this particular beer is called St Phoebe. It comes in at 5.8% ABV, and this one is a wild ale, sour beer, whatever you want to call it, that has been fermented with plums. So yeah, this is also the 2022 edition. I should point that out because there is a 2023 edition of this one. But yeah, I have to admit, I love plum sour beers. The last one I had, I think, was from Shiga Kogen beer up in Japan with the Japanese ume plums, and it was absolutely beautiful. And there was a few wildflower beers that I could have chosen for this first one, but you know, having tried that beer before, that was the main motivation for checking out this particular one. This is yet another beer that I picked up at the wonderful Gur Beer in Chimshatui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong, who've always got a really interesting array of stuff, but it was one of, I think, 3 that they had, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, very nice place to start, I think, with Wildflower Brewing and Blending. And as I say, this is this brewery's debut on the channel. If you do want to learn a little bit more about Australian beers, do make sure you check out my friend Sam over at Short and Stout Beer Reviews. He'll keep you up to date with the Australian beer scene a little bit more regular than I, but I know that he really likes the stuff that these guys do as well. So I'll put the link to his channel in the video description below. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Wildflower Brewing and Blending. Very first time these guys are featuring on the channel, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Australian playlist along with a number of other things. That is being added to quite regularly these days because we do get a bunch of Australian beers up here in Hong Kong. But yeah, do check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Wildflower for the first time then. So, Wildflower Brewing and Blending, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Marrickville in the inner west of Sydney in New South Wales down in Australia, and the brewery was founded back in 2016 by brothers-in-law Topher Bohm and Chris Allen, and they opened their doors to the public in 2017. So Topher is apparently originally from Dallas in Texas over in the US, but he moved to Australia in 2009 to study astrophysics. And during this time in Australia initially, he started to dabble in home brewing, and he eventually started brewing professionally part-time for extra cash. And he was brewing first at Flat Rock Brew Cafe and then at Batch Brewing, both of whom are from Sydney as well. But apparently during all of this time brewing, he became particularly interested in the yeast component of beer, and he was aware of the wild ale breweries of Europe and the US. So while travelling for his astrophysics research, he kind of took advantage of the spare time that he had, and he went to visit some breweries such as Brasserie Thierry's in Esquelbec in France, and then he also visited Jester King in his native Texas before actually spending some time working at Partisan Brewery in London back in about 2015, and then he would eventually return to Australia, to Sydney in early 2017, and that was when they started up the brewery. So the name Wildflower is apparently derived from the fact that all of the beers are brewed with yeasts collected from native flowers of New South Wales. So they have a house yeast that was cultivated from these flowers, and then it was combined with a single strain of brewer's yeast to create what they're calling their house culture. But the brewery itself is located in a former metal foundry, and it's distinctive for the fact that the walls are simply lined with different barrels and wood and things like that. If you look at the picture of this place, it really is quite unique, and it really lets you know, yeah, this is a sour beer brewery. It's quite akin to the pictures you'll see of some of the Belgian lambic breweries and things like this. But apparently when they moved into this building, they went as far as spraying the entire brewery with inoculated wort, just to ensure that this got into every kind of nook and cranny and stuff like this, and you had a true sort of sour beer environment actually. But the malt that they have comes from grains grown organically in the local area, and then the wort for the beers is made at Batch Brewing, which is just I think about 2 or 3 minutes drive away, it said. But the fermentation is judged simply by Topher's palate before he moves on to the blending side of things, and he spends quite a lot of time trying to get the flavour structure in each beer that he wants. But these days, and from early on, they've got an on-site tap room which is called the Cellar Door. This opens Thursday to Sunday. They've got 21 taps there, 10 of which are dedicated to their own beer. They sell a lot of beers from Mountain Culture as well, who are from out to the west of Sydney actually, and their kitchen is often taken over by different pop-up bars and things like this. So you'll often get some interesting food there, but you have to keep an eye on their social media to know exactly what food they're going to have. But as of June 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 250 different beers according to Untappd, and no doubt that number will continue to rise. But when it's a sour beer brew like this, you also have to remember that some of this number that I'm mentioning to you might be the same beer, but just different vintages. Like I said to you, there is a 2023 vintage of this one, but of course I haven't seen that here in Hong Kong as of yet. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Wildflower Brewing and Blending for the moment. I'm sure we'll have more information to add to the notes at some point in the future, but yeah, the big thing that was missing really was the background of Chris Allen. To be honest with you, I searched around quite a bit for that, but couldn't find anything. But you know, we got a nice background of the brewery, I think, anyway. But yeah, if you want to learn more, check out the brewery website, follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and check out the Untappd, Rate Beer and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up, and if I sound a bit breathless in this video, it's just because the humidity in Hong Kong at the moment is a bit insane. But yeah, you can see the artwork on this one is very nice. If I bring it forward, you can see the wildflower symbol there, which I think is really quite nice. It's almost a little bit like a W with kind of test tubes on the outer arms, if you like. But yeah, you can see the artwork on this one is supposed to depict the plums that have gone into this beer, and it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. So yeah, it says 2022 St Phoebe. St Phoebe is an Australian wild ale made with plums. It is named for Chris and Emily's first daughter. St Phoebe was a 1st century deaconess from modern day Greece. In 2022, St Phoebe was made by blending barrel-aged golden mixed culture fermentation with 990 kilograms of fresh, whole, tree-ripened ebony sun plums from Thornbrook Orchard in Nashdale, New South Wales. After a 3-month maceration, and re-fermentation of fruit and beer, it was bottled and allowed to naturally carbonate and mature in bottles before release. So yeah, it's really interesting. I guess the 2023 vintage might have only just been released, but it says here that this one is best before June 2025. So we're drinking this one in June of 2024. So at this point, it's been in the bottle for 2 years, so it should be quite nice. And I do notice many Australian breweries are doing this these days. So it says on the side here, made on Cadigal Wangal land with ingredients grown on Wiradjuri land. Probably pronouncing those wrong, so for that I apologise, but I think it is cool to see the indigenous, Aboriginal, or whatever we're going to call them, names that are put on these bottles now. Nice to see. But yeah, this is a 750ml bottle, plain silver top on the can there. And it looks very nice. Like I said, 5.8% plum sour. This one a sour gold nail in the base, but this should be quite nice. Let's get it out into the glass then and see how we go. The St Phoebe from Wildflower Brewing and Blending, Marrickville, New South Wales, Australia. Let's do it. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening there, incidentally. But yeah, let's get this guy out and see what it's all about. That does look nice, actually. I think that's about enough for our first pour, actually. So yeah, we've got maybe about a third of the bottle actually into the glass at this point. So yeah, just over a finger of a frothy, slightly tinted cream coloured head there. Obviously you can see some medium bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there, and obviously the head gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go. It does look very nice, this one, and you can see the colour of the beer. It's actually like a kind of bright unstained mahogany when you look at it. I think that's a good descriptor for it. Blood orange might be another good one. It's about the same colour as some West Coast IPAs that you'll come across, actually. That's probably a good comparison for you, because I think it looks a little bit different on the camera to how it actually appears to the naked eye. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of that head there, but overall it looks very, very nice. The beer does have a little touch of natural haze to it, which you're always going to get with beers that are, there probably is a bit of secondary fermentation with this one going on in the bottle. But yeah, it looks very, very nice. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role as well, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, in the case of wild ales like this, quite often it will be the fruit that is a major determining factor, because this beer probably would have just been like a straight up golden straw colour without the addition of the plums in there. So yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the appearance of this one, I would say. Let's go on and have a wee look at the aroma. So, oh yeah, that is good. That is nice. I'm going to say I'm probably going to enjoy this one. It's just got a really nice balance to it. It's really sort of, it's one of these more woody, funky, almost saison-y like base beers. But then on top of that, you've got the big juiciness from the plums. You've still got a little bit of green component to this one as well. It actually comes across just really, really nicely. This is giving you everything that you could ask for from this type of beer, I would say. So yeah, I really like how this goes together. I can tell I'm going to like this one. So yeah, let's just break the aroma down a little bit then and describe the beer a little bit more in depth. So the backbone of this beer then. Yeah, absolutely with this one. You get that lovely, smooth, oaky character coming out of this one, and I'm interested because I know that a lot of the barrels that Wildflower use are donated by the almost innumerable Australian wineries, and I don't know how much oak grows in Australia, if any, to be honest with you. I'm really not up to date with my flora and fauna and all these kind of things of Australia. I assume in certain places there will be, probably in the south, oak trees will be a little bit more prominent and things like that. So perhaps Australian oak again is a bit different to European and American oak, because the oak that I'm getting out of this kind of smells a little bit drier and a little bit more spicy, in all honesty, but some of that could be attributed to the characteristics of the yeast that they're using in here. And of course these guys have a house culture, so you have to bear that in mind as well. But yeah, you get the lovely smooth oaky notes out of this one. There is a wee touch of vanilla in the base of the beer as well. Yeah, just when I take it in a bit more deeply, I think those kind of more spicy notes are probably attributable to the yeast rather than anything else, because yeah, the oak is really quite smooth, lovely little bit of vanilla to it, and then of course you've got these vinous characters on top of it. It smells a little bit more like white winey, this one, to me, than red winey, in all honesty. So yeah, a bit more white, green grapey, vinous character to this beer for sure, and quite citricy in that regard as well, I would add. Quite a dry wine almost. So yeah, on top of that, you have some really nice bready characteristics. And so yeah, the base beer, you can smell there's a little bit like a kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust in there. Definitely some, you know, straight up brown bread as well. I do get a little bit of a brighter white bread to this one too. And within that, you do have the sort of crackery and funky notes coming out. But as I say, a lot of that comes out at the back of the nose. So that's kind of what makes me think, yeah, these sort of characteristics are more to do with the yeast rather than anything else. But yeah, let's see, nice woody crackery notes in there. I would say, yeah, nice woody crackery sort of notes in there. I would go as far as saying that yeah, the yeasty character, it has a little bit of that more kind of grainy, rusticy, farmhousey brown bread to it. But I do think there's a little touch of like brown sugar to this one. Like there's a teeny little hint of like a toasty caramel, some sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity notes in there. Maybe a little hint of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch too. So yeah, the aroma of this beer is really, really interesting in that regard as well. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to say about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. I think we're going to get much more complexity out of the actual flavour than we're going to pick up in the aroma, in honesty. Now, the hoppy side of this one's quite interesting too. I've talked about this on the channel quite a lot before. So when it comes to wild ale breweries like this, it's always interesting to talk about the hopping mentality of these breweries, because in the more sort of, if we can call them old school, wood barrel fermented sour beers like this, quite often what they did with these beers back in Belgium was they would use older hops that had lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, and the idea was that using these older hops would still give you the complexity of the hop flavour, but it wouldn't detract from the sour side of the beer. These days, the more modern sour beer breweries that are doing like smoothie sours and all these kind of things, some of them say, yeah, we don't need to add hops to the beer because the fruit's going to suppress it anyway. So yeah, but some breweries will add a little bit of hop just to give you more complexity. So it really just depends on what you want. But yeah, with this beer, you are still getting some of that nice green components, probably like a little bit of Hallertau or Tettnang or something like that that's in here, unless there's probably some sort of Australian noble type hop these days that is being used, because you know the Australians have got a lot of very good hops of their own. So yeah, the hoppy component of this beer, there's certainly a little bit of earthy character, a little bit of herbal note, some nice floral aromaticity, but quite a lot of zesty grassiness in this one too. So all of that is in here. Now the fruity side of this beer is quite obviously the plum, so you can smell that big oily, it's almost like a prune, it's like a kind of dried plummy character, in all honesty. So yeah, you've got a lot of nice kind of prune and juicier plum in there, but of course underneath that you've got flavours like a little bit of pear, a little bit of sultana, wee bit of like a fresh green apple kind of thing, and of course all these vinous notes from the barrel as well. So all in all, the character of this beer is really, really interesting. So it's definitely worth just taking a bit of time and enjoying the aroma of this beer before you get stuck into it, that's for sure. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy that aroma. This one really is very, very interesting, but I think it's about time that we taste it and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is St Phoebe 2022 vintage, 5.8% wild ale with plums from New South Wales. This one comes to you from Wildflower Brewing and Blending in Marrickville, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh, that's very nice. First impression of this one, very, very clean, actually. Really quite light in its mouthfeel as well. And you know, when I think about the climate of Australia in a sense, that makes sense. But yeah, this really is. It's very nicely done. I wonder if all the Wildflower beers are quite as clean as this. Because this is absolutely one of the kind of cleanest wild ales from, you know, wood barrels that I've come across. You get everything you expect in terms of the flavour, but yeah, just the water quality that's in this. And with these guys being from inner Sydney, it's another surprise. It's just really surprising that the beer has turned out like that almost. You know, I would have, if I was tasting this blind and told it was Australian, I would think it was from maybe Tasmania or somewhere in Victoria, maybe something like that. But yeah, this is pretty damn good actually. I have to say, just really surprised with how clean it is. But yeah, in terms of the flavour profile and everything, it gives you what you want from this style. So yeah, let's try and just break this one down then and see what it's all about. But really, really nicely done, and quite easy drinking sour beer, this one. So yeah, it's definitely one that shows you a lot more complexity into the aftertaste, but it also has that kind of drinkability to it as well. Yeah, and just reading the kind of mentality and stuff that they were kind of, you know, just reading what they wrote on the website and stuff like that, you kind of get that feeling that they want people to be able to come along and, you know, drink a couple of glasses with this as they would with wine, and just sort of change perceptions about what beer actually is. So yeah, it's not surprising. I don't know how many kind of higher strength beers they have, in all honesty, but yeah, it seems like quite a few of them were lower ABV sessionable barrel sours. So yeah, could be interesting to try something that's higher in ABV from these guys next time and see what that's like. And of course there's loads of different adjuncts that they do as well. But yeah, let's just break the flavour of this one down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So, middle third of your palate. The backbone of the beer is obviously that lovely, smooth, oaky character there. And remember that generally speaking, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back on the palate, sweeter flavours will come out further forward. So you can feel at the back of your palate, the oak on this one is a little bit drier and has almost a wee bit of spicy character. But then yeah, as you move further forward, it really starts to show you all of its kind of, it shows you all the smoothness and the kind of almost sweet character that you can get out of it. But yeah, on that middle third of the palate, you can feel a little touch spicy toward the back, smoother further forward, and then you've got that nice wee kind of vanilla quality to it as well. So yeah, the yeah, the way that all that goes together, I think, is really nice. So on top of that woody layer, you have the vinous note coming out of this one. And now that I've actually tasted the beer, I'm pretty sure I was right about saying it was a white, that at least one of the barrels, we know this beer is blended, but I think it's primarily a white wine quality that comes out of that. And it's quite for me, it's quite a citricy wine, like has a good little bit of dryness to it and just that almost tartness to the character. But yeah, above all of that, you do of course start to get the kind of bready, malty characteristics of the beer. But like I say, this one is just very, very light, actually, really drinkable stuff. I'm just curious, actually, I can see if there's, it doesn't look as if there's too much sediment in the bottle with this one, because you know that's one thing you do have to be aware of for some of these beers. You can try them clean like this, or you can put the sediment in the base. You can stir it up and get some of the sediment out of the thing, but it really doesn't look as if there's too much of that, as I said. But yeah, you do get this nice kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust above that. On top of that, you can feel a little bit of a fluffier brown bread. Then you've got a nice white bready character sitting above it, and then yeah, a little bit of toasty, biscuity character in there, which is nice. So yeah, a little bit of toasty, biscuity character above the bready layers. And in the dead centre of your tongue, you can feel there's a little circle there, which is like kind of Werther's original butter candy butterscotch on the base, and then a sweet caramel right in the middle of the tongue actually. So this beer, in honesty, in some ways it feels as if it's very straightforward. It does everything you expect it to, but it's just really nicely done. That's the very interesting thing about this beer. Yeah, just so light and easy to drink, which is it's quite interesting. Like I feel that I could drink this one a lot more quickly than some of the lambics and things like that I come across. And you know, naturally I tend to sip sour beers, but yeah, this is something that you could tan fairly easily if you wanted to. But yeah, for me, sour beers are sippers and tasters rather than being session beers. But to say they want to change perceptions about these beers. But yeah, middle third of the palate's now covered. Let's go to the back third of your palate then. So yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. The brown bread is in the base, but then most of that kind of build up, I would say, is white bread rather than anything. And as I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate is, I would say, more like a dry side of the oaky character. Then you've got the vinous layer in there as well, which does feel a little bit more almost earthy and slightly funky in a sense. But then yeah, wholemeal brown bready bread crust. Above that you've got the above that you have the kind of wholemeal brown bready character in there, and you can feel that layer is a little bit taller and more airy. Then the white bready layer above that, again taller and more airy. Then you can feel just a little bit of the toasty, biscuity kind of character creeping over the top of that. Then you've got the yeasty side of the beer sitting at the top. So let's just take a wee look at that yeasty side of things. But the yeasty side of the beer is quite nice. I mean, in the dead centre of it, you can feel that sweet. You can feel that sweet wholemeal. You can feel like a sweet wholemeal brown bread. Then around the edge, you've got a bit more of a kind of farmhousey crackery. You've got a little bit more of a kind of farmhousey crackery sort of brown bready character in there. And then yeah, you can feel the bread crust around the edge, and definitely back third of your palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of squashes down and compresses together that little bit. So yeah, that's the malty yeasty side of the beer covered. Let's talk about the green component then. So obviously the green component will drop out of this beer the more that you age it and things, and it will have done some of that in the barrel. But yeah, the back corners of your palate, you can feel that nice kind of, you can feel that little touch of earthiness in there, and as you move further forward, the beer is just a little bit more herbal. Then as you move further forward from that, it becomes a lot more floral and a lot more kind of grassy and zesty in there. So yeah, that's quite interesting as well. On the on the kind of front third of your palate then, which is where a lot of the sour activity is starting to come out of this one, you get the you can feel on that front third of your palate, the base is of course the nice oaky wood, which is a lot smoother, a lot more vanilla-like. You've got the vinous character in there, the brown bready bread crust, the wholemeal brown bread, the white bread, and then you can feel the build up between middle and front third of your palate. It is white bread again, brown bread in the base, white bread on top of that, and a wee bit of kind of toasty bread on the top, I would say. But then yeah, above all of these layers and things, you've got that more oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll the way out of the beer, and you've also got the impact from the plums, the macerated plums in this one as well. So let's just look at all of that. So for me, from the oily bubble and the sort of hoppy side of the fruits, if you like, for me, like you're getting a little bit more of a, I would say, you're getting a little bit more of this kind of oily pear at the back of that. Well, maybe a bit of sultana actually, dry white grapes. There's a little bit of sultana there at the back of that front third of your palate. As you move further forward, it's got a little bit more kind of oily pear, I would say. And then, yeah, a bit more of a kind of fresh green apple sort of thing into the front half of that front third of your palate. But then, yeah, above that, of course, you've got the big plummy side of this beer too. So yeah, obviously the impact flavours you get on this one. This is quite sharp in the beginning, I would say that. Yeah. But it's not I would say the impact flavour on this one is certainly not the sharpest I've come across in this style category. But yeah, you've got this nice little bit of sharpness to this one, which I think is great. It comes in and it rolls in just behind that very front curve of your tongue, so it just goes in there, boom, and then it mellows out really nicely, and into the aftertaste you get this lovely, soft, oily, plummy, pruny sort of thing out of this one. And these plums are really quite like Scottish plums, are a bit more kind of red fruity, if you like, whereas, they're a little bit more sort of along the lines of being kind of maybe blackcurranty or blackberry-ish almost in their flavours, whereas the plums that I've tried from the eastern side of the world, like Australia and Japan and things like that, they seem to be a little bit more like datey and peary in terms of their sort of flavour profile. They're along those kind of lines. I can't think of the right descriptors for that, but yeah, these plums are really quite interesting actually. So yeah, it really is interesting just to see the difference in these fruits. And as I've often said, different water profiles, soil profiles, and all this kind of stuff, it can dramatically affect the flavours of fruits and stuff like this. So it's really interesting to make observations like that, I think, especially when we're talking about sour beers. But yeah, the plummy side of this beer is nice, and it mellows out really nicely into the aftertaste. And for me, a good sour beer should always have a good transition from the sharp initial intake to the more oily, smooth character on the back. You do get a wee bit of leather out of this beer into the aftertaste as well, which I think is nice. But all in all, really nicely done beer. As I say, the thing that's surprising for me with this one is the mouthfeel. It's just so light and so clean almost. So let's round off the review then by talking about that. We've summarised it quite nicely there. So for me, this beer is kind of bottom end and mid-bodied. For me, the carbonation does have a slight degree of crispness in a sense, but also the beer has a slight oily slickness to it, which I really like, and a real cleanliness, which is interesting. IBU wise, I think this beer probably, it's like 5 or 10 IBUs. It's very low in that side of in that aspect, but I'm pretty sure there is a bit of IBU to this one. The malts, as I said, you've got the lovely smooth wood in there. You've got the nice malty characteristic as well, the kind of brown sugary character sitting on top of that, and the nice dryness in there. But yeah, the fruity side of this one I think is great as well. You've got a lovely sort of, you've got the lovely oily fruits from the hops in there, and then just that sour impact. Beautifully done beer, this one, and it certainly makes me very curious to try some of the other ones from Wildflower. But I think this was quite a nice introduction to the brewery. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This has been a really interesting beer to try actually. I'd be very curious to know how long it was aged for as well, because I get a feeling with this one, if you aged it that little bit more and got even more smoothness out of it, it could prove to be really quite interesting, and you know, taking it up to the higher ABV might be an interesting experiment as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This was the St Phoebe 2022 edition, a 5.8% plum macerated wild beer. I'm not sure exactly of the description that I would use, but this one comes to you from Wildflower Brewing in Marrickville, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Wildflower Brewing and Blending as well, and we will return to these guys again at some point in the near future. Check out my friend Sam at Short and Stout Beer Reviews. Check out my social media, check out Wildflower social media, and I'll see you guys again in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.